Okay, well, listening here. Okay, welcome everyone to my medieval sewing party episode, something, something, something. Today I'm going to be working on my Hennen, and I would actually have to ask my condotier. It's on the top shelf, far left closet, the last remnants of the one I already had. So today, welcome on board Queen Victoria. Actually, we are wending our way very slowly and very placidly from the Islas Baleares, from Palma de Mallorca, towards Cartagena. So we're now doing a medieval sewing party at sea. And finally, well, not finally, I'm going to continue constructing my knot a hennen. And just so you know what I mean by that, this is the iconic medieval headgear that is often called the princess hat, even though it was worn by certainly most of ladies than just princess. So just to give you an idea, this is a truncated version of one, right? So we're actually going to be making one that is basically a full cone, but not the super, super long cone because I want to be able to dance. And I suspect that the super, super long ones that you see depicted in illustrations are exaggerations for effect. And we're not actually the kinds worn by women, because anytime we see a portrait of a woman wearing a not a hennen, a proper portrait, we don't see the crazy exaggerated long cones. We see what most people would call a truncated cone, which means it's about, maximum a foot and a half long. And those ones don't come to fine points. They actually are kind of cut off at the end, which is also a more practical way to make one of these. Excellent. Good to hear that the audio is okay. That was going to be my next question because I'm restreaming today, which means I'm not using a microphone or anything like that, which in some cases might make our lives simpler. Right. So let me just bring you up to speed where we are at on our knot a hennen. So first off, I guess I should say that the 15th century English word for this style of headdress is actually either a turret. In Scots, it was called a torat, depending on the declension. In French, it was called an atour or an haut atour, also sometimes a grande corne. My condottiere is going to be doing some lute practice in the background. Again, this is a bit of an experiment, so let us know if that's impinging on you hearing me, or if it's unpleasant or whatever. I'm just going to move this a little bit forward. So yeah, that's where we're at on the project, is that I finished the edging, turning the edges of the shell and the lining. This is the lining. This black silk is the shell. And I will attempt to hold this up so you can see the tiny little stab stitches I did all the way around, turning the edges in and then stab stitching it down. And I did take some footage of that, and I'll post that as a short at some point. So the ultimate plan is actually to make a really nice cover that will be purled in a beautiful fancy pattern, probably fleur-de-lis in honor of my own sigil, possibly also with my initials and my condottiero's initials worked into it, also in honor of what we see in portraits, for example, Maria Baroncelli, Maria Portinari, as would become. In the original version of her portrait, you actually see the letters worked out in pearl, but it later got modified and painted over, which is interesting. So, and I think that's because there were M's and B's, and once she was married, she was no longer a Baroncelli. So this is the cover. It's temporary, and then eventually Okay, welcome back. We are at sea, and I don't know, maybe a giant plane flew overhead and interrupted the connection from space, because we're basically flying on Starlink is the Wi-Fi we're using. Oh goodness. And it's saying I have no chat window. So right now, just so everyone knows, I have the Mario Brothers pixel version of a dinosaur showing me where the chat should be. So for now, I cannot see your chats. I'll let you know what comes in. But I did see Takeda's question just before the connection vanished and then reappeared. And that question was, what is a stab stitch? A stab stitch is a stitch whereby, and I have a demonstration of the stab stitch on my YouTube channel in the full-length 2-hour project vlog depicting the making of my 1480s Florentine gown, my most recent one, and actually demonstrate the stab stitch. And so the stab stitch, you're going to go up and down with the needle straight through, making sure that you don't angle the needle like this. You actually make very intentional violent stitches up and down, and then you can place the stitches super closely. Okay, my condottiere looks like he's going to explode if I don't let him speak.
It's the most manly of stitches.
As he says, it's the most manly of stitches. But is it really manly? Is it only manly to stab? Anyway, so that is the stab stitch creates this look. There we go. Yeah.
You got the comments back?
No, I do not have the comments back. So little tiny stitches like that, right? That's a stab stitch. I did get some video of it demonstrating it. And if you go again to my YouTube channel, to my project vlog on my Gamora, my 1480s Florentine gown, the new pink one, you can see a demo of that there. So just so everyone knows, I am at sea. For some reason, the internet connection vanished entirely and came back. So unfortunately, that means I can't see the comments. So I'm going to attempt something. Hopefully this won't completely ruin our experience together. Otherwise, I will restart the stream, I promise. Yes, reload. Yes, I got it back. Okay, fantastic. Okay, we're back. I refreshed everything. The most common troubleshooting thing to do if something fails is to restart it. Well, I basically refreshed the stream. So today what we're going to be doing is actually sewing the vellum pieces together. So this is goatskin vellum. You can actually see the fur pattern. So this was like a black and white goat or a black and gray goat, apparently. And you can see where the dark hairs were on the skin side, as they call that. So this is skin side and this is flesh side. And flesh side is always super smooth and silky. And skin side is where you can actually still get you can feel the pores and where the hair follicles once were. Right. So I have already actually marked this before we left. I did take video of this. I marked it in a line on both sides where we will be putting the holes. And I actually marked the holes, but now I have to actually go and poke them all because I did not bring, I used a leather tool, a leatherworking tool for measuring the spaces for putting in your stitches. I just ran that down the edge super hard, and I only did it on one side like a dumb butt, apparently. And so now I'm going to have to go through with my needle and poke the holes in manually because I didn't bring an awl. No, I did not. Now, if I thought about this, we went to a place in Barcelona, a home improvement and crafts store, and I bet we could have gotten an awl of some kind there. They also had cork there. So I'm pretty certain we could have gotten the leather awl, but it wasn't on our list. So I'm going to ask my condottiero to add it to our list at his convenience.
No, our shopping list?
Our shopping list, because tomorrow we are in Cartagena, and we will definitely be able to find a leather working shop or a leather store in Spain. Spain is famous for its leather, so this should not be a problem for us. In the meanwhile, I'm going to do something painful probably to me, and I'm going to use a needle to poke out these holes because I don't want to lose any time working on this. I want to get it done. Right, so basically this is going to be, it's going to come together to make a cone like this. Tempting to not lose the giant needle I just pulled out. So this is it, right? This is the so-called princess hat, right? And it's designed to fit around my head, but also I left space, extra space in its circumference, so that when I put the lining in and the fabric on the inside of lining will take up some room. And then when I put the band around my head, the fillet with the loop on it, that will also take up some room. So this will now comfortably fit over all of those layers. A big mistake I made on my last one, this one, which does not fit comfortably over a fillet. It drives the fillet forward because it fits my head perfectly, but that means that there's no room for a fillet. So if you are taking measurements for your own, not a hennin, your own mitre, your own turret, as they were called in 15th century English, remember to leave some extra play, a little bit of extra space for your fillet and for the lining that's going to go on the inside. Yeah, so Takeda says that Ricardo Monteban would be sure to talk about the luxurious Corinthian leather. Yes. And actually the Cordoban leather is what's really famous in medieval footwear in the Middle Ages. It was known as the prima level grade of leather is for shoes, is the leather was imported from Cordoba, and it was goat skin, particularly was goat leather. So that was apparently the leather par excellence for the most luxurious fine in the Middle Ages, and that's spanning multiple centuries. So, yeah, so here is, and why vellum? Some of you may be asking. Vellum because medieval bishops' mitres are made of vellum. And it makes total sense that the secular version, or the sacred hats that did survive, that are very much like turrets, would be made in a similar way to a turret itself. So there are multiple bishops' mitres that have survived in museums. There's a great one in the museum, the Berlin Museum of Applied Arts. Berlin, I think it's Museum für angewandte Kunst or Kunstgewerbe. Like there's different German words for a museum of applied arts, but in Berlin, Museum of Applied Arts, they have a fantastic bishop's mitre from the 15th century, and it's lined, it's got its shell, and its shell is just covered in glorious embroidery and sequins, and it's actually worn away at the top, so that the fabric is worn away just a little bit, so that you can see the vellum and you can see the wire edging that goes along the edges of the mitre to help it hold its shape. And so I thought to myself, 20 years ago when I first encountered this, when I was still living in Germany, and I saw this hat, and I said to myself, that's got to be a perfectly valid set of techniques for making a 15th century ladies' hat that is tall and pointy and will need all of this reinforcement. Therefore, that's the documentation for how to make a mitre, in my opinion, using my techniques, because unfortunately, the ladies' versions of this, as far as I know, none have survived. If you know of any extant ladies' turrets, the not a hennin, then please do let me know, but I am unfamiliar with any that have actually survived. So there's a couple of techniques. There's another bishop's mitre that survived, whereby the fabric didn't survive, but the frame did, the vellum frame did. So it's this perfect, it is literally a bishop's mitre, you know, this shape on two sides connected, you know, last couple of inches at the bottom. And it's it's upcycled from a much older medieval manuscript, a much older book. And it also it has a couple of interesting features on it. One of the interesting features is that in the part that goes around the head, like that, the part right around the head here, it is reinforced with another band of vellum. And so I have a couple of scrap bands of vellum that I have upcycled from the last turret that is now defunct for reasons of violent baggage handlers. And I'm actually going to now attach this around the bottom to add reinforcement all along this bottom edge. And the reason that you need this kind of reinforcement along the bottom edge, I've from years of wearing it, I know why. Because the bottom edge of my turret eventually started buckling because of the heat and sweat from my head from wearing it while dancing while just existing in hot climates. And so I'm pretty certain that's why on the bottom of this one extant bishop's mitre frame, there is extra vellum that goes all the way around. And that just basically provides an extra barrier against the heat and humidity from your own skin. And of course, reinforcement, but reinforcement that's comfortable, because you probably, the bottoms of the bishop's mitres do not have a wire around them. And thinking about this, you don't want a wire pressing into your head. That's not going to be very comfortable. So it totally makes sense to use more vellum to reinforce the bottom rather than wire. My condottiera has a comment.
And if it was iron, it would probably rust really quickly being around the skull.
Yeah. So that's something. So not iron. Iron wire would not be the choice here. In most of the extant wire we have that seems to be relating to headwear, and there's a bunch that actually survived in the mud of the Thames. Yay, anaerobic environments. Yay for people just throwing crap into the water and it ending up into the streets and it getting washed into the river. It's copper alloy, which, yes, it can possibly oxidize, it can possibly corrode, but it's not going to do what iron will do, which is create a very corrosive rust that will absolutely eat through the fabric. Yeah. Okay, so that all being said, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing with this. If you have any questions about any of that, go ahead and let me know. I'm going to go ahead and start poking these holes with this very, very scary looking, a very long needle that I think is actually meant for sail making. And so one of the reasons I used the leather spacing tool, which is basically, it looks like a spur rowel with a handle. So you just run it along and you press it into the vellum in this case, and it leaves little divots. And in some cases, those divots will actually make holes, although vellum is much harder to get poked through than a leather would be. So you then have to go through often and, actually use another tool like an awl to pry those holes open a little more. In the case of, looks like I did this on these already. Yeah, I did the one side already. I don't know if you can see that a little bit. You can see the holes I've already poked on the one side, and I did start poking on the other side. And I realized after I poked a million holes on this side that I don't need a million holes. I really don't, because it's just, there's not that much stress that this undergoes. So a hole every inch or so is honestly fine. Yeah. So on the other side, I've been much more generous with my spacing so that I don't have to sew a million tiny stitches. Sometimes you just don't need to over-engineer your work. You just don't. It's not necessary. So keep that in mind, that even medieval people realize that more is not necessarily more. I'm just going to angle this down a little bit more. Yeah, my baggage handler truncated is now, yeah, a truncated corn. It is truncated. Very funny, Susan. Nice pun. Ryan should appreciate that if he hears it. The baggage handler damaged.
No, I got it.
The turret is, yeah.
It's now truncated.
It's now truncated.
Yeah, if I had been concentrating on Rastaboli Joyoso, I would have been laughing uproariously.
Yeah, that's unfortunately what happened to the rest of this. The upper part is the baggage handlers, the gorillas that handle your luggage, tossed my luggage. I think it must have fallen off of the baggage cart actually on the runway or on the tarmac, and it got run over. And that's happened several times to my luggage, in fact. And I'm pretty certain that they just picked it up, dusted it off, not even really, and tossed it back on another luggage rack. And that's all she wrote. And they didn't even bother to tell me about it. And the miter was so badly warped that it just couldn't be saved. So I took it apart, saved the part that was salvageable, which was the lower part, and the rest is going to be the part that isn't warped. I'll find some use for, because parchment vellum is not cheap at all. And I'm just having a darn hard time actually getting these needles through. I think I did use. This is the one time I wish I actually had a thimble of any kind. I don't remember which needle I was successful in doing this with because it was a couple of weeks ago that I last worked on this particular part of it. But yeah, an awl would be a very superior choice for this. Okay, do you know if the corona ducal of the Doge was volume body under the brocades? If you mean, do you mean how, like, what created that volume? I'm pretty certain it was probably made the same way. It was probably made using vellum, because remember well, except, okay, so it depends on if you're talking about just his miter or if you're talking about, you know, like the actual metal bits. If he's wearing the actual metal bits on it, as long as it's against his head, it's fine. I wear my heavy metal coronets on top of these all the time, and they withstand them just fine. So I could see that the doges might have been made in the same way. But on the other hand, I think there are some extant doge caps from the 18th century at least, and I doubt they would have been made terribly differently from their medieval forebears.
Yeah.
You know, Venice is this kind of very interesting situation, right? It kind of, you know, they're trying to be a republic, they're trying to pretend to be a republic, and yet they have, you know, this somewhat undemocratically chosen leader. You know, single power sort of thing, but they also have a senate, and apparently my spacing has been getting further and further apart since I started poking these holes. Interesting. Maybe a little closer is a better idea. The reason that I'm doing this, so what I'm doing is I'm creating a joint, basically, that will connect these, because if I were to just take this and whip stitch it together along that edge, it would actually puff out like this. It would create a tear-shaped hat. To make it actually be round, you need to actually have a flat joinder like this that overlaps both sides and then actually makes it turn into a round shape instead of a teardrop shape. I'm trying to demonstrate that for you, right? It attaches on both sides like this, and then it actually creates a round shape instead of a teardrop shape. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm attempting to do anyway. I'm just not finding the right tool to create these needles. Vellum. Autocorrect doesn't like the word vellum. That's not at all surprising. Not in the least. Auto-suggest and autocorrect play havoc with any posts I make about medieval living history.
They corrected Ethernet.
They correct, yeah. It's terrible.
Ethernet's a word.
Ethernet's a word. So yeah, definitely we're gonna get an awl tomorrow. Of course, by tomorrow I might be well enough along that it doesn't matter. Let's see. I think what I'll do instead of frustrating myself like that, I'm going to just go ahead and lay this over here and mark. Did we bring a pencil by any chance?
Of course I did.
Could I have your pencil, please?
Do you want the heavy duty pencil, slate lead pencil?
Slate lead pencil will be fine.
That'll be harder for me to get.
Autocorrect is Satan and should be banned. Yeah, seriously. It's pretty rough. Oh my goodness. So we had some very fun adventures yesterday, and some of you who were on my travel channel.
This one?
Yeah, that'll be perfect.
Pretty heavy. That's the heavy duty one. I'll have to search for that.
Oh, let me see. I mean, that's fine. So those of you who follow us on our travel adventures some of you came along with us on our tour of the medieval city and cathedral and palace, and then the castle of Castel del Belver in Majorca yesterday. And so some of you saw our adventures, but for those who didn't, we had some fun medieval adventures yesterday. The original plan had been for me to get completely dressed in 15th century Burgundian attire. And we were going to proceed to the Castel San Belver, which is this amazing, perfectly circular castle in Palma de Mallorca that overlooks the harbor in this very elegant, aloof fashion. And we were going to do lots of things there. We were going to dance. I was going to do medieval story time, possibly a medieval sewing party. We had great plans. Well, first, my condottiero wasn't feeling well, so he didn't get dressed in his 15th century finery. Then we saw the weather forecast, and the weather forecast predicted violent thunderstorms with beaucoup rain. And I said to myself, I really do not have any interest whatsoever in in dragging my Burgundian gown with its 20 plus feet, 23 feet of hemline and its 3 layers of fabric through water and mud. I don't feel like having to carry all of that around. And if it rains, then I'm not going to be able to put it down anyway and show it. So we did not do that. I wore just my kirtle and, everything else, including my fine collar from Armor and Castings. And I know there's going to be some people who are probably going to lose their mind that I'm wearing just a kirtle and my collar. Because according to some people, it simply wasn't done. It simply was not done. But here's the thing, my dears. There's no documentation that it simply wasn't done. Anyway, so we had a bit of an adventure because we also got off the boat late because my condottiero was not feeling well. And we did not even get to the castle until 6 o'clock. Now we get up to the gate of the castle. It's supposed to close at 7, but the gates were already locked. And there was a sign hanging from the one set of gates that the park was closed because of inclement weather. Okay, that's fine. Maybe we can try another gate, we thought. Well, we went to the second gate, and just as we approached the second gate, by the way, this involves going up and down the hill multiple times, a very steep hill. When we get to the second gate, a car approaches from inside, from the locked gates. And I said to myself, well, how did he get through the locked gates? Maybe they are still letting people in. Well, it turns out it was the caretaker who was actually leaving for the day, and he unlocked the padlock, drove out, and he unlocked the gates, saw us there, and he said sorry in Spanish, or Castellano, as they say in Majorca. He said, sorry, it's closed. We've had the craziest day today. You won't believe it. We locked everything down because of the storm, and then it didn't storm. And I said, well, he said, because 2 days before, Palma de Mallorca had gotten stormed so violent and tempestuous that it had flooded up to like chest high on me in many places. And there were apparently hundreds of tourists at the castle in the middle of this violent storm. And he said there were little tornadoes everywhere, and there was hail and floods of water just, filling the castle moat, flooding down the sides of the park. And he said it was really bad. And so they closed, they didn't open the castle at all yesterday in anticipation of that terrible rain, which never came. It never evinced itself. We had, 100 drops were felt in the cloisters of the cathedral. And so they didn't open the whole day for no reason. And so when we approached, they had apparently not been open at all that day. Now, here's the thing. He said, come back tomorrow. We will be open. And I said, oh, that's sad. We won't be here tomorrow. And he said, well, here's the thing. I can let you in. That's no problem. There's a secret gate. You can go out if you want. And I said, oh, say more, sir. And so apparently there's an entrance to the park that surrounds the castle that is open all the time. It doesn't even have a gate, and only the locals know about it. And so he showed us, there was a map, a big sign with a map there of the castle grounds, and he showed it to us. He said, this is the spot. You just walk along this road and you can go right out. He said, but be careful. There's no lighting on these paths after dark. Okay, whatever, if we die in the pursuit of beauty and history, it's worth it. So in we went, and we proceeded up the hill, up and up and up the hill. And if you'd like to actually watch this, we've live streamed it on my Travels with the Creative Contessa channel, so you can see us doing this. You can also see the castle itself. And we get up to the castle, and it's this amazing circular castle, and it's just so beautiful. You have no idea. This thing is just gorgeous. It's a perfectly circular castle, of which there are not many examples in Europe. Not a tower. The whole castle is circular. with towers inside the circle. And, you know, we were able to walk, we weren't able to go in, but we were able to walk around the outer bailey, no problem. It was beautiful, just beautiful towers, the sun setting and casting this golden light that reflected in this magical, equally golden manner off of the limestone of the castle. And there was hardly anyone there, only locals who apparently treat the hill like their personal running track. So, because we happened to show up at just the right time, just the right moment in this place, we were able to go and see the castle. If we had shown up any time earlier or later at that moment, we would not have been able to get access to the castle. So it was just absolutely fortuitous. If we'd actually been on time with our plans, which was to make it to the castle by 5 p.m., there would have been no castle at all. We couldn't have gotten anywhere near it because we would have had no idea about that secret entrance, the secret entrance. I'm not going to tell you where the secret entrance is. I don't want to ruin it. Actually, even if I told you, it would make sense. So that was our adventure, and we did get a lot of really beautiful footage of me in my what I call my Contessa adventuring kit. We were able to capture that pretty nicely. So yeah, I would say stay tuned for more imagery and medieval beauty from that particular castle, the Castel de Belver. You know, there's so much on Majorca, especially in Palma, that just gets completely overlooked, I feel like, in the medieval community. And that's because, you know, islands often get overlooked as being part of a medieval heritage. People get, especially in the Mediterranean, people look at the islands as just a place one goes to get drunk and have affairs, and get drunk while having affairs, party while having affairs. But the reality is that, you know, even highly touristed places like Palma, where you hear British English almost as often as you hear Spanish, even they have amazing medieval sites that are absolutely worth seeing. The cathedral, for instance, in Palma de Mallorca, is a stunning piece of early-ish Gothic architecture, 13th century Gothic architecture, and it has these elegant flying buttresses, and it's survived very well despite, you know, all the sorts of wars that generally rage around Europe, and despite the Spanish Civil War, which, you know, was also pretty damn destructive. So we also found out that Antoni Gaudí had made his mark in the cathedral, and also Barceló, who is another avant-garde artist from contemporary of Gaudí. He created this scary and hideous chapel. Of course, you know, modern art critics just love it. They love it, but it's just scary looking. It's all these very realistic looking scary fish sort of coming out of the wall at you in this stucco fashion. And it's definitely, it's, you know, highly symbolic and highly metaphorical and highly allegorical, but not my taste. It's just scary looking, really. Yeah. So not my preference, but in the treasury of the cathedral, they had some really nice, actually medieval pieces, and in the Archbishop's Palace, which is free, the museum is free, the Museum of Sacred Art, they also had some works of art I've never seen in any art history book ever, anywhere. There is never a section of art history in art history books devoted to the island areas of any of these places, right? You know, if they talk about Germany, they're going to talk about Albrechter. If they talk about, and there's like no art before Albrechter, of course. There's no artist in Germany that predates him. If you talk about Flemish art, then it's going to be Jan van Eyck and his companions. So it's, you know, it's really interesting the bias of art history books, in only showing us actually a very small sampling of the amazing pieces that are out there. And so I did take plenty of pictures of the 14th and 15th century works of art that are in there. I'm honestly, 16th century art loses my interest, and after that it really loses my interest. 17th century art, for the most part, especially in the Mediterranean is just, I don't know, it strikes me as soulless. The 17th century artists in the northern part of Europe, the Dutch masters, they're still doing some interesting things with, you know, chiaroscuro, and there's a couple of outlier sculptors, say in Naples in the 18th century, who have some amazing skills in managing to create gossamer layers in stone. But for the most part, I feel like art starts losing its edge in the 16th century, with those couple of exceptions I just mentioned.
Can anyone hear me playing?
Oh yeah, so can everyone hear? Can you hear the lute at all? Anyone? Can anyone hear the lute, or is it just, can you only hear my speaking? Is the lute distracting or is it enhancing? Please let us know, because we are experimenting with a whole lot of things on this trip. And I'm confident that I'm going to put this needle through my finger with you all watching at some point, so that should make this video go viral. Nothing like violence and blood to grow a channel's followership. Okay, so I'm just basically taking a needle, a thicker needle, and just driving it through the holes that I've already poked to make them bigger so that it will be easier to go through with the thread. And I'm actually going to use, if I brought it, I did bring it, it's in here. I'm going to use linen thread to attach all of this, attach these pieces together. And the linen thread, that is here.
Is it?
Yes, this is linen thread. You'll notice it's gray. This is natural colored linen. This has not been bleached. This is just natural linen. And especially when you use linen thread, you must use beeswax. If you do not beeswax your thread first, where did beeswax go? There it is. And this ugly looking lump, this thing that looks like a cancerous tumor that's been removed and left to petrify in a museum somewhere, this is actually beeswax, and still smells yummy like beeswax. This is what you want to use on your thread when you are hand sewing. I know many of you know this, but maybe there are new people in my community who don't, or people who've just joined the community. So yeah, you want to wax your thread once you actually get down that path. Now, the thing is, I was just thinking about this. Gosh, I can feel how the sweat from years of wearing this has stiffened it in parts. So the strips that I have to add to the base are straight. So I've been thinking about this, and I'm going to actually end up cutting them to fit into like sort of multiple pieces. There's actually a kind of straightish edge on the front here, so I can just attach that straight up. But then on the two sides, I'll have to cut pieces. So it'll be basically like 3 separate strips along the edge here to try and capture that, because as you can imagine, the cruise ship didn't let me bring a razor knife on board. They barely let me bring scissors. Comment, I like the lute, but it took me some time to adjust to trying to listen to both. Yeah, probably if I had a microphone, if I'd actually mic'd this, it would probably work better. But right now we're just kind of relying on the internal microphone of the camera for reasons of a frustrating technical sort. Yeah, Riemenschneider is a pretty amazing sculptor, woodcarver from Germany. Yeah, they do make, you're right, Dürer and Riemenschneider, they're like almost the only two that ever get mentioned in standard books on medieval art. It's like also how I read in one art history book recently talking about Venetian art, and this was a Venetian talking about Venetian art. He said that basically before the 1490s, there was nothing worth seeing that had been painted in Venice. And I thought, wow, it's crude. The crude and unrefined technique of the artists who preceded Carpaccio are of little worth and certainly a waste of your time to watch. Oh, okay. Just tell us how you really feel. Just, don't hold back, my friend. Trying to actually make markings through this. It'd be much easier if I had if I had brought chalk with me. If I thought about this, I would have brought chalk powder with me. And then I would actually pounce this, and then the chalk would come through the holes and mark the other side, and then I could go through with the already extant holes, and then I could go through with my needle. But I didn't think to do that, so I don't have any chalk powder. So for those who don't know about chalk powder and pouncing, this is actually a medieval technique of transferring a pattern. So the way they would actually do embroidery patterns in the Middle Ages is they would first do a sketch on a piece of paper or a piece of vellum, and we actually have some of these that have survived. Vellum earlier, paper later, and then they would poke holes all along the outline of the sketch. And then they would affix it to, say, this piece of vellum, and they would pour chalk powder over it, and you rub the chalk powder through the holes. And then there's that pattern in chalk powder, and you just take a pen, a medieval pen, so it's basically what you might know as a quill, and you would actually trace that out in ink so that it's fixed permanently, and then you have the cartoon on your the design, the cartoon as it was called back then, on your item, and then you can embroider it or paint it or do whatever to it. So if I had actually brought chalk powder, I could have pounced the holes out, but instead I'm just kind of having to hold this here and mark it out because the pencil that I have is too fat to go through. It will not go through. And I honestly...
You know where my backpack is?
Yeah, it's hanging right there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Might have a pencil in this. Maybe.
Oh, Merrick, are you sewing buttonholes for breeches, or are you cursing? Are you getting... Or are you empathizing based on your own experience sewing buttonholes for breeches? Yeah, is anyone else working on any projects right now? Tonight we actually have on the ship, for those who don't know, just joining us, I am aboard Queen Victoria. Oh, yeah. I am aboard Queen Victoria, and we are wending, it's a Cunard, that's a cruise ship, the Cunard Cruise Line. Very, very iconic cruise line. Ah, yeah, that actually works. Fantastic. What's that? Ooh, look at this. It's a wooden sharpener. Wow. Look, it's a wooden pencil sharpener instead of a garbage plastic one. It's really nice. Where did you get that?
That came from a British art kit that I got.
Wow. Okay. That's
you know,
nice.
I like to pick up random art things because I would love to be artistic.
That's nice. So I'm just lining this up and marking the holes that are already there to align with the vellum beneath so that I can attach this and reinforce it and prevent my sweat from causing it to buckle the way it did on my first ever one. Yeah, the holes, it is, yay! The pencil is marking through the holes. That's so exciting. Now, if it doesn't align exactly perfectly, it's fine. It will still work, but you do want the holes on your 2 layers of vellum to be mostly aligned. And unfortunately, unlike fabric where you can pin things together, pinning vellum to vellum is not easy. And also then you have extra holes that you may or may not want to be there. This piece is a little curved, so it's a little annoying. It's not quite exactly straight. Oh well, it is what it is. I'm actually under a deadline for this. This needs to be done by October 29th, I think. So yeah, sooner is better than later. I don't want to just wait to the last minute and hope I get it done. But yeah, not lining up exactly perfectly is slightly annoying. But it's the piece I have. I think I could try the other piece and see if it's straighter, maybe. Sewing and cursing through the whole thing right now. Yeah, buttonholes. I actually enjoy buttonholes. Merrick, what is your issue with the button? What is your specific frustration, should we say? Spill. Let us help you. Let us be the emotional support you need in this time of challenge and trial. I'm not dressed medievally today because I'm going to be changing into my gala dress very shortly. So tonight is a gala evening. It's the red and gold ball, and I have this gorgeous custom-made gown that some people say looks like a James Bond lady's gown, and I'm not certain if they mean the villain lady or the heroine lady, but I'll go with either. It's a beautiful dress, and so I'm not going to change for like the 3rd time today. Two costume changes, as it were, at a time is plenty for me. Yeah, this actually works much better. This one's straighter. I'll use this one instead. Sorry, I was not talking.
So what was the consensus? The lute is fine, or am I?
Yeah, the lute. Some people generally say they really like the lute. Well, Tillman kind of postdates my period of interest, as I've often said. And Susan, God knows you know this. You've heard me say it before. The 16th century loses my interest for many reasons. One of which is that really the era of courtly chivalry, as it's called, as you might know it, is done. And I know that, so-called chivalry really only existed in a very limited place and time in Europe, and that's fine. I understand that, and it was only for a very specific class of society, but that's the class of society that interests me to recreate. I'm interested in learning about life at the other strata of society, but let's be honest. One of the benefits of medieval living history, any living history, is that you get to pick which part of society you recreate. Why on earth would you pick the peasant class? Or why would you pick, a beggar? Or why would you pick, I mean, I guess there are reasons, but I personally enjoy the courtly culture of, most of the courts of Europe from the 12th century through the 15th century. They all sort of had their own version of this Arthurian-inspired courtly culture that was full of rituals and ceremonies, that floated around romance as we would understand it modernly, in fact, and that encouraged a perhaps platonic set of relationships between people that are interesting and dynamic. And I say perhaps platonic because it's kind of unclear in certain ways whether all the relationships were platonic or not. But there are all sorts of fun courtly games that went along with that, and that's so very completely the opposite of modern culture. That interests me to recreate much more than working in the fields all day. Although I frankly would enjoy working in the fields all day because I actually do enjoy manual labor, but that's a separate thing. It's just sewing with double thread that I hate. Oh yeah, Merrick, sewing with double, for those who don't know, sewing with double thread is the bane of existence. Merrick, if you're able to get a thicker buttonhole thread, then you won't have to double the thread. A lot of the extant examples we have of buttonholes, and we actually have quite a few extant buttonholes, if not the rest of the garment, the buttonhole strips tend to survive. I think because they actually got cut away to recycle the rest of the fabric. Or upcycle the rest of the fabric. So, the buttonhole strips that I've seen, the buttonholes tend to be done with single thread. It's just a thicker single thread. So maybe would it be possible to get a single thread or a thicker buttonhole twist? I find my really thick buttonhole twists generally on eBay in the, piles stock that usually are being liquidated from dead stock from haberdasheries or families who have inherited supplies from their grandmothers or their great grandmothers and don't know what to do with these almost antique vintage crafting supplies, and so they just put them on eBay and they sell them for a song. They really do. So if you go to eBay and you do a search for silk buttonhole thread, or even just silk thread, and you click on used to differentiate from all the sellers in China who are trying to sell new, possibly not actually silk thread, then you can actually find really good deals on silk buttonhole thread that was made 30, 40, 50 years ago, is still in super good shape, and it's way higher quality than the stuff they're making now. And you get it much more cheaply. And in some cases, they don't even make that gauge of buttonhole thread anymore. Honestly, there's a lot of cases where Gutermann, for instance, has stopped making a lot of the thicker buttonhole threads because no one uses it anymore. The thinner stuff still gets used often in haute couture and in tailoring, finely tailored things, so you can sometimes still get it there. I really need to resharpen this. Wow. Yeah, that did bring it to quite a point. Yeah, are you using, Merrick, are you using buttonhole twist or not? So let me show you, if everyone, I can show you a buttonhole twist I actually often use for my finger loop braiding. This is, okay, here we go. This is a vintage Gutermann. I got this in Germany. And it is 30/3 in size, I think. Trying to remember. 20/3. So it's really big. And it's great. With this, you can definitely easily use single width. So you want, the measurement you want is generally 30/3 or 20/3 for medieval applications of buttonholes. And it will make your life much, much happier because then you only need single layer instead of double layer or double thread. Double thread, yeah, double thread is nightmarish. I hate something with double thread. Hate it with a passion. I'm having issues getting, I think my pencil was too blunt, in fact, for the purpose. So I'm going to try again to get the marks through. Okay, that one works. See, the frustrating part about working with vellum that's different from working with fabric. Fabric you can kind of massage and bend into place. Vellum, no massaging, no bending. And I experimented with what happens, unlike leather. I experimented with what happens when you apply heat and moisture to vellum. It's bad. It's real bad. It's bad. It seizes up instantly because all the proteins, especially when they're wet, and then you apply heat, it literally buckles into a scary tripe looking thing. Very unappetizing looking. Oh, poo. The tip broke again.
Did you break my pencil?
No, I broke the tip. Probably that's come through. Fortunately, once the tip breaks, it doesn't go through the holes anymore.
So I gave you a sharpener.
Yeah. I just have more violence. I just have to press harder. Oh, normal Gutermann thread. Yeah, Merrick. No, you need buttonhole twist. So you definitely want buttonhole twist, even just the basic buttonhole, the usual buttonhole twist. So for those who don't know, if you want to aren't familiar with that, do a search for silk buttonhole twist thread, and your life will be so much happier because of it. It will definitely improve your quality of sewing life if you get silk buttonhole twist. Now, often in the retail area anyway, silk buttonhole twist comes in 10 meter or 10 yard lengths, which is not as much as you think it is. So you want to buy a bunch of that same color if you care about the color. Then don't just buy one, buy several, especially depending on the number of buttonholes you get. I would say that one normally sized medieval buttonhole probably takes a third of a meter. I never really measured it, but thinking about how much I go through, probably one buttonhole takes about a third of a meter. If anyone has ever measured how much silk buttonhole twist goes into a standard medieval buttonhole, let me know, because I've never actually done that. Now I need to go and experiment with that.
There's your monograph.
There's my monograph. there's my monograph, my big contribution to historical fashion research in practical applications. Stay tuned for my presentation at the upcoming collegiate costume collegium, where I discuss my research and methodology in assessing the consumption of silk buttonhole twist in making medieval sized buttonholes. I mean, obviously, there's a couple of factors that go into how much thread you need per buttonhole, how deep you make the edging, the finishing on your buttonhole. Medieval buttonholes, if you look at them, they're usually pretty meaty. The finishing is pretty meaty. And you can understand why, because the buttons were not vestigial. They were really used. The buttonholes were put under a lot of pressure. There would be a lot of pressing in and out, pushing the button in, pulling the button out. So you want to have a pretty meaty finish there to not stretch out the edges of the hole itself. Okay, so I finally figured out how to make these holes actually mark, and that's by applying more violence. Apparently violence is the answer, at least sometimes. Right, so now I'm going to go ahead and poke these holes through in some way that will hopefully not push the needle back through my finger. Haha. Oh, the fun I have. Oh, goodness. Yes. So tomorrow is Cartagena, and Cartagena is a coastal city on the east coast of Spain. I grew up on the east coast of the US, and so for me, ocean is always east. Ocean is always east. But then you move to, say, Korea, or you move to Spain, and then the ocean is everywhere. Both of them, similarly, they're everywhere. They're peninsulae. So literally the ocean is just everywhere you want to be. And so there's no more, well, if the ocean is there, it must be this direction. No, that's not true. In fact, in both of them, well, Spain's just got it in all 4 directions because it's only connected by this little spit of land and still has this massive northern coast. So
and the eastern coast.
And it has an eastern coast, and it has a little bit of a western coast. So Spain directions cannot be ascertained by the location of the ocean, which means I always have to stop and think about the location of cities and their coasts. Hence, Cartagena is on the east coast of Spain. And it is another of these ancient cities that was founded by the Phoenicians, 7th or 8th century BC, and then the Romans took over, and then the Visigoths, and then the Moors, the Arabs, and then of course the Reconquista. Eventually, it got taken back by the Crown of Aragon, I think. And so, there's layers and layers of history there, but it continued to be used as a port city, a very prominent port city, I think, up until this very day. So that means that a lot of what's there is going to have been updated and modernized. It's not going to be one of these perfectly preserved medieval cities, but I am seriously hoping, wow, this is really thick, it does not want to penetrate. I am seriously hoping that we might be, and we haven't checked this out yet because we just booked this cruise 3 days ago and we've done no research about what we're going to do in any of the ports. And I'm hoping that we can actually, it's an overnight port. I'm hoping we can take the train to Granada and go to the Alhambra. That's my sincerest wish, that we can take the train and go to the Alhambra. That would be super awesome on so many levels. So we will see. We will see. We arrive in Cartagena tomorrow. But first, red and gold gala with lots of much more modern dancing than I usually do on definitely than I do on my Creative Contessa channel. So we'll be doing some Argentine tango, probably some Viennese waltz. We're doing some what the Viennese call the slow waltz, the English waltz. We'll be doing, oh yeah, this needle's much better suited to this. It actually goes through the vellum instead of just back into my finger. We'll be doing Lindy Hop. We'll be doing some Balboa, maybe some Charleston. I will be live streaming the Red and Gold Gala, but not from my medieval channel. I'll be streaming that live from my Travels with the Creative Contessa channel. So if you're interested in seeing what my cruise adventures are like and what a beautiful Art Deco ship this is, what it's like to actually have a gala evening on this amazing space, check out Travels with the Creative Contessa.
If you really want to support us, check out Travels with the Contessa.
Yeah, we're this short to be able to monetize on Travels with the Creative Contessa, so more views are better. Anyway, often my travel life and my living history life intersect, because one of the main reasons we travel is to explore the history and culture of other places and other peoples, which means that invariably, I end up doing some sort of living history something in many of these ports. And of course, people think that we're some kind of living statue performers, or that we've been hired. People on the ship think we've been hired to be part of the entertainment.
Sometimes they just think that I'm a worker on the ship anyways.
Yeah, so sometimes they think that my condottiero, because he wears 3-piece suits and tuxedos and whatnot when other people aren't necessarily, they think he's just an employee on the ship. He often gets asked to bring tea, or if they can check out books from the library, or how to get to a place, or what his next performance is. So it's pretty funny. People are always abashed when they realize they've made false assumptions based on appearances. Let that be a lesson in the dangers of prejudice.
Assumption, at least.
Well, I mean, prejudice means prejudging, based on appearances. So prejudice has nothing to do with race. Racism is a form of prejudice. It is not the only form, however.
They're fine. Freaking linguists.
Yeah, linguists and their pedantry. Linguists are us. You can take the linguist out of her profession, but you can't take the profession out of the linguist. It just never goes away. Yeah, for those who don't know, I was a translator in a not so distant past life, but ChatGPT and Google Translate and a lack of concern about quality translation work in corporations who would pay for such things means that translation is basically a dead career. In fact, at universities, translation professors in translation departments are telling their students, quite frankly, that they should expect not to have a job in this field and that they should only pursue translation. In fact, I heard this from one of my very devoted Patreon patrons, that they should only pursue translation as study if they're doing it for their own enjoyment. And I think to myself, who would pursue? I mean, I enjoy translation work, don't mistake me. But if I'm going to get a degree that's just for fun, it's not going to be translation. I mean, really, if I'm going to spend $100,000 on a degree just for fun, it's going to be damned fun, not translation. So, yeah, that's where we are in the world, which means that I have had to look at other ways, other professions that maybe won't be eaten by machines. And apparently, teaching medieval handcrafts is something that maybe will be eaten by the machines last. And so this channel is part of that, is part of my teaching and sharing knowledge about medieval handcrafts. Some of you know, but some of you don't. I also teach workshops. I get hired actually to go around the world to various groups and teach workshops, in live workshops, real in-person workshops. It actually works. On medieval dance, on Renaissance dance, on medieval and Renaissance handcrafts, such as Fingerloop braiding, embroidery, cooking. I teach a lot of different skills that were prominent in medieval life. So yeah, that's what I do now professionally, because the machines ate my other career. Oh, and they ate my second career too. So my second career after translation went by the wayside was editing. Well, now there's all these editing apps that are also artificial intelligence driven. And so that career also vanished almost overnight, literally.
To the point where the company just disappeared.
Yeah, to the point where the company for which I was freelancing disappeared without a word. They didn't even give me my final paycheck. They just disappeared.
Shut it down.
Shut it down. And I thought about going back to school for coding, but I know that's going to disappear to the machines by the time I get through all the training and building experience and getting to a hireable level. And then, there's just so many fields are going to be eaten by artificial intelligence. Oh yeah, this would be so much easier with an awl. Oh my goodness.
I could give you the awl from my kit. I'm joking. I have an awl in here.
My condottiero almost suffered an early death.
No, I've only got pencils in here.
Here, you've got big meaty fingers. See if you can drive it through. I'm starting to develop a blister on my
But I'm also afraid of needles.
Oh yeah, you are. That's true.
Where do you want it?
See the little black holes? The ones that don't have holes already.
If only you had some cord to push this into.
I mean, you're right. I also have this board. I guess that would make it easier, wouldn't it? But it might not go through. But the cork, it would go through the cork. But do you really want to puncture your cork that way?
Yeah.
No, I didn't think so. So let me show you for those just joining.
But look.
What? Oh, wait, we're getting... Oof. Okay, so we're about to go real low tech. Maybe.
See?
So we're actually now using... This is what... Oh, I guess we could have used this too. I'll go ahead and thread this needle and get it waxed up and ready to go for the sewing together part.
Have you just been doing those 6 holes?
Yes, I have just been doing the 6 holes. I mean, it took me a while to mark them because the needle wasn't going through. So, yes, but no. All the needles are now scattered about because I've gone through all the needles trying to find the one that would actually poke the right holes, which means we might actually indeed have to get some needles from Cartagena tomorrow. There's actually a couple of things I want to pick up tomorrow from Cartagena. I'm going to.
It? You don't want any more holes?
That's it for now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm kind of cursing myself for not bringing any of my colored thread, embroidery floss or buttonhole silk twist or crochet thread for Fingerloop braiding. All I have is boring gray, black, and brown. And I would like to do some nice, pretty colored braids. So we might be looking for a haberdashery tomorrow in Cartagena and or Granada if we get there. So I can get some new silk thread for Fingerloop braiding for some of these parties, because
we will look up what the word for needle
for those, and I will, yeah. And we will therefore also buy some needles, since I've apparently they've just vanished in here. So for those who wonder what Fingerloop braiding is, this is an example of a pretty colorful version. This is called a lace indentured. The lace is the word for what we now call Fingerloop braid. Indented, unindentured. No, I think it's indentured.
It's indented.
It's indented. Okay, whatever. They mean the same thing, literally. So yeah, this is an example of one I would like to actually do for you all, but I need the multicolored thread to do it, because it would be, I mean, I guess I could do, what do they call that? A grayscale, brown scale version of the pattern.
Show them the instructions.
Yeah, do a brown scale version of the pattern, but this one is actually a 46 step to get through one repeat of the pattern. This is what the visual of the instructions look like. There's page 1. And there's page 2. 46 steps to get through one repeat of the pattern. And I'd like to demonstrate that for you in one of these live streams, but I really do want to have 2 colors. I could absolutely do brown on brown, but what's the point of having, I mean, it would be visually interesting, I guess, because you still have the texture of the brown wave with the brown background, but it really is supposed to be done with multiple colors. Okay, well, speaking of double thread and how much I hate it, I'm going to double thread in the case of putting together this, where did it go?
Where did it go?
Oh, it's down here. I am going to actually use double thread in the case of attaching this vellum to the vellum, because I want to make sure it has that extra strength to withstand my vigorous Contessa lifestyle. And for those who don't know, with beeswax, you always want to, if it's not already soft, and this is a little stiff because it's a little old, you always want to soften it. You can soften it by breathing on it. You can soften it by putting it in your hand. You can soften it by putting it under your butt and just sitting on it. And then when you pull it through, when you pull the thread through, do not pull from the needle. You will snap your needle in half. Pull from the thread. I always pull from the middle out like this, and I run it under my thumb so that it actually drives the thread into the wax, and then I run it in the other direction from the middle out again towards the needle. And sometimes, depending on the quality of your linen thread, how well it was spun, how tightly it was spun, etc., sometimes it will shred in your beeswax, and you eventually develop a feeling. You can tell how much pressing and dragging your linen thread can take. That's not something I can really teach you. You just kind of get a feel for it. Yes, Costume Cornelia. We are working on the Nada Hennen. We have just finished poking holes along the rim here, and we are about to attach, oh no, where did it go? We are about to attach the reinforcing piece.
In your hand?
No. Where did it go? We're about to attach the reinforcing piece. Where is it? Where's the reinforcement?
It was just in
Oh, it fell over here. We're about to attach a reinforcing band of vellum to the part of the vellum, the bottom part that will go of the Nada Hennen of the turret that will be around my head and therefore exposed to the sweat and the heat. So yeah, Costume Cornelia, you're here in time to see me working on this. So we have poked the holes. We are now ready to actually put thread and needle through it. So I'm actually going to start by anchoring my thread, and I'm using a pretty meaty needle, not because you need it necessarily, but just I don't want to accidentally snap it while pulling it through the holes on vellum. And I always start by anchoring my thread. For those who don't know what that means basically knotting it in such a way that any future sewing does not pull it through the holes. And I'm encountering a spot where the wax created a little ball of linen, created a ball of linen basically, and I'm just manually removing that, because if you try to drag this little spot of balled up linen and wax through the hole, it will actually eventually shred the linen thread and it will come apart and you'll have to start all over again with your threading, etc. So I'm just getting rid of that now before it creates a problem. And especially when working with linen thread, this is why we'll make the exception and work with double thread when it comes to linen, because linen is much fussier, depending on the caliber of your linen, than silk is in that regard. That's also kind of why I wanted bigger holes, because the linen is much less evenly spun than silk is. Silk, for those who don't know, well, silk doesn't even need to be spun. It's plied. Silk comes out of the cocoon ready to go. It's fantastic. Silk comes off of the cocoon of a silkworm, and it is ready to be plied, to be dyed, to be plied into thread. It doesn't actually need spinning. It's not like linen. It's not like wool, and not like ramie, not like any of the other plant fibers or any plant fibers. Not like wool. And you actually, from that perspective, silk processing, see, it broke anyway, I wasn't able to get it out. See, it just shredded in half. So now I have half the amount of linen that I once had.
It already shredded.
Yeah, there's better quality. I will say that I bought this linen thread a long time ago, and there is better quality linen thread out there, but I also don't want to just throw this away. So we deal. As they say, we just deal. Just wax my thread and no more tangles. Yeah, it's really great. Wait, Merrick, does that mean you weren't waxing your thread before? Just out of curiosity, inquiring minds want to know. Yeah, so is anyone else? Merrick is working on accursed buttonholes. Is anyone else working on any particular projects? Okay, so basically because my thread is doubled, I just ran it through the knot to anchor it in place. And now we will go ahead and commence with the sewing. Yes, the seating. And basically, I'm just going to go up and down because this is going to get covered by fabric. It will not itself be exposed to any direct friction. It will be exposed to friction that is transmitted through the lining of, damn it, put it on the wrong side. Grr! Okay, start again. I was talking to you all and not paying attention. So there is a side on which it should go, and it should go on the side that will be against the head, and that is naturally, this curves naturally this way because of how it was made and rolled up and stored for many years. So we start again with threading. Oh, goodness. Run the needle back through.
Here we go again with thread.
Yeah, here we go again. This is what happens when I talk to you all and think about things to tell you rather than focusing on my work. Oh well.
Medieval news. Or not medieval news, actually. Ancient Greek news.
Oh, yeah. So there's some fun ancient Greek news. Well, news in the archaeology community. A German woman returned a 4th century BC column, finial capital that she stole from Olympia 50 years ago.
Yeah.
50 years ago, she finally returned it to the authorities. 50 years. I don't know how it is you just walk out of, I mean, even 50 years ago, surely someone might have seen her carrying
a finial from the
a capital from a column. It's not a small piece. I saw a picture of the thing she returned, and it's not a small piece. I am very confused how this. I didn't get to.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, how it wasn't made clear how she got away with this paper. But yeah, she finally returned it after all these years.
The Greeks are commending her for her honesty and
the Greek government is commending her for her integrity in admitting to her crime and returning the item. So maybe they're hoping it will set an example for the British Museum. Too soon? Too soon?
What is that joke? Name something that seems British but isn't.
Name
Contents of the British Museum.
Name something that seems British but isn't 9/10 of the British Museum. I mean, it's the disposition of archaeological artifacts is certainly a challenging topic, and it's I can joke about it because none of those are my things personally, but I understand that there are emotions that are high on all sides, and there are good arguments to be made in some cases on both sides. In other cases, there are no good faith arguments and objects should just be returned. Depends on the object. And it depends on the place to which it's being returned. I mean, as we saw what happened in Iraq with antiquities that were just outright stolen, and of course ISIS, they're still trying to recover from the Antiquities Museum. And then of course ISIS blew up Palmyra. So not that I would suggest that Palmyra should have been transported stone by stone, but it's just to underscore how many of these artifacts are actually in politically unstable regions. And if the artifacts had been in those regions when that political instability raged through, we would have no more of those artifacts. That's my point. So, yes, it's a challenging topic.
I'm trying to connect my buttons. I haven't put them in yet.
Let me see. Cornelia says, I bought some beautiful yellow gold linen and I'm making a kirtle. That's very cool. I'm currently designing a sumptuary lost seal medallion as a fundraiser for late 16th century Florentine themed event. That is super cool, Cornelia. That is definitely a niche a niche topic in living history circles, is the sumptuary lost seals and medallions. There's actually a paper I found on academia.edu on sumptuary seals. So yeah, that's a really interesting topic. Did you find the same paper? Is that what you're basing your medallions off of, or did you come at it through a separate venue or separate avenues, shall we say? For those who are not familiar with academia.edu, you must go check them out. Do a search, and they have such an amazing array of top quality academic research there on a huge array of topics. And it's free, it's freely accessible. You can support them, you can get a premium subscription, etc., but you don't have to, unlike other journal platforms like JSTOR or research.net. And yeah, they will actually then suggest papers to you that fit with your search history, which in this case is correct. It's always correct. Academia.edu's algorithm always knows what it is I want to read, because sometimes they suggest to me things I found in an anonymous fashion, so the site doesn't know I've already read that paper. So yeah, and that's how I came to the sumptuary medallions. The sumptuary law medallions was a suggestion that was based on my previous academia.edu reading. So an excellent site, can highly recommend. And Cornelia, that is a fantastic idea as a fundraiser for an event. What are the medallions are you going to make them out of pewter or bronze or some other metal? Is there like degrees where you can get, like a higher quality metal for more money?
Silver, gold.
Silver, gold, sumptuary medallions for more money. Oh, clown meat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Clown meat.
Yes, I did. I said clown meat. Maybe they just wanted me to say that. They gave me $10 though. I'll say it.
Well, I appreciate the joke.
Susan Staple. Oh,
Funny.
Susan has some. Oh, hello. Susan has some news. She says they may have discovered Cleopatra VII's tomb. Dr. Kathleen Martinezia has been working for 20 years in the Alexandria area, and yeah, the Taposis Magna seems to be the site. That would be super cool.
That's the Cleopatra?
Yeah, yeah, it's Cleopatra VII. I think I think Cleopatra VII is the Cleopatra as per most people as per history's popular understanding. Cornelia says, someone found the article and she's pulling from that and a few other resources. We're doing mock rolls in a fashion show with fashion police. Honestly,
fashion police, I love it.
Honestly, Cornelia, that sounds so splendid on so many levels. I'm sorry I won't be there for that. Because I would absolutely love to help violate the sumptuary laws with you.
You get the medallion for violating some
interesting. They are hoping to do a 3-tier system on the metals for more donations, hopefully some metal casting, but if not, we may just do different color wax seals. You know, it's all cool. I mean, it'd be cool to have the metal ones that are like stapled into the cloth, right? Like they actually attach them to the hems, to the parts of the garment, so that when ladies were out and about, for those who don't know, some of you are probably wondering what the hem on about. And with good reason. So sumptuary seals, sumptuary laws, first off, are what you might actually refer to as the fashion police. These were laws that were designed, honestly, from an economic perspective initially, and then also increasingly to maintain a certain social separation between the nobility and the upstart merchant class. So they regulated what you could wear, out of what materials you could wear, how long your skirt could be, how many different kinds of rings you could wear at once, the kind of jewels you could wear, depending on your social status, depending on your income in many cases, and the Europe date to the 13th century, of which I'm aware. Depends on how you count a sumptuary law, because also in Brehon law in first millennium Ireland, there are laws regulating what colors people can wear depending on their status, their rank. So, could you grab me the scissors, Hanson? Oh, wait, maybe I have snips in here. Oh, no, I've got snips. We're all good. So, those are what sumptuary laws are. Now, in Italy, starting, I think in the 13th century, maybe the 14th century, in many different polities, including Bologna, for instance, officials start issuing seals to men and women, but mostly women, when they have to indicate that what they're wearing meets the approval of the statutes of the sumptuary laws, that it is in compliance, and/or that they have paid the fine in order to wear the garment. Pay to play in some cases, you know what I mean? So these seals, as far as I know, the seals that I've read about, if I recall correctly, were made of pewter or lead. Or pewter, either lead or pewter with lead. I don't recall reading. Now, when I say this, I don't recall because I don't recall genuinely if they were made out of more precious materials. But I think it's a super cool idea to have an event that's all about violating sumptuary laws, and to have sumptuary law seals that basically gives people permission to wear whatever the hell it is they're wearing. And that you use that as a fundraiser for an event. I think that's just so wonderful and fantastic all the way around. And another way in which the Society for Creative Anachronism applies the creativity part in a fantastic, wonderful way, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty splendid. So does anyone have questions about sumptuary laws? I will say one of the lesser known parts of sumptuary laws is that they don't just regulate clothing. A lot of people mistakenly think that the word sumptuary has something to do with clothing, but it has nothing to do with clothing. It comes from the Latin sumptus, which means luxury. And so it's about regulating luxury. And one of the economic anxieties of many polities in medieval Europe, starting in the 13th century, as trade, international trade starts picking up, is that people are spending their money on foreign imported goods, which means that lots of the cash of the kingdom, of the polity, whatever the polity is going to another polity. So it literally means that they are depleting the local resources, which back then that was real gold, right? That was real gold, that was real silver. We weren't talking banknotes here. And so they were literally depleting the wealth of the kingdom by sending it abroad, by purchasing all of these foreign goods that were luxury items and were imported. And also, many people were spending way more than they could actually afford, including on foodstuffs. But a lot of those luxury foodstuffs were also imported. So sanctuary is not just clothing, it's food, it's accessories, in some cases it's furniture, it's bedding, every kind of thing that could be considered a luxury item would fall under the heading of these sumptuary laws. And it's very clear when the laws are more about the economic side than the rank, because, for instance, in a sumptuary law issued under Edward III, they talk about it's apparently in response to a petition by the Commons. And it says very clearly, because all of in paraphrasing, because people are spending so much of their resources, of their financial resources on these luxury goods, to the detriment of the kingdom, of the welfare of the kingdom, meaning the economy, we thereby request that you, our king, O great sire, pass laws that regulate who can buy what and minimize the amount that can be spent on items that are sent abroad. And then when it actually gets down to the nitty-gritty of the regulatory effort, they'll specify something like a knight of 100 pounds a year may buy such and such. Also, a yeoman who owns land worth such and such a year may also buy the same thing. A yeoman was a non-noble landholder. So what that means is that it was partially about rank, a knight, but not entirely. It was as much about their income. Hence, yeoman and knight being lumped under the same category. So it's much more complicated than just elite snobbery. It really is. So I just want people to kind of step away from that misinterpretation, that misunderstanding of sumptuary law. It's actually much more complicated and makes a lot more sense when you consider it in the context of the era. Thread so much. Yeah. You always, whenever you're learning about any aspect of a historical material culture, always try to understand the context in which that practice, institution, policy, etc., was created. I'm confident that there's a whole bunch of messages that are about to pop up all at once. Oh, everyone, how is the quality of the stream in terms of the visual? We have a new room, we have a new cabin here, and it's in a different spot of the ship, and I'm kind of hoping, therefore, that the Wi-Fi is stronger than it was in our last cabin, where we couldn't get enough reception to have a video chat to even check my email. So I'm hoping that this spot is better because it's more centrally located. So just let us know. We're trying to figure things out, new things, new places. And my hope is to gown up again tomorrow in Cartagena and go have a nice medieval story time somewhere. In some scenic location. We really wanted to do a medieval story time yesterday at the Castel del Belver. It would have been magical. It would have been a perfect site. Unfortunately, we could have still done something even when we were there, except we were in dire need of a restroom, and the restrooms in the castle were closed. Understandably so. I know what kinds of things people in the Mediterranean countries get up to in unlocked, unmonitored castles. So, that means that we were desperate and distracted. And so there was not going to be any medieval anything happening once we finished with our pictures and our filming. The point of that is that I do sincerely hope that tomorrow we will have the opportunity to actually do some scenic on-site medieval story time in a fantastic medieval site. That's my sincerest wish. Anyway. Look up. Ooh, look at that perfect bow tie. Yeah. Tanya, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. And also thank you for being a channel member, Tanya. Really appreciate that. I thought there'd be more questions or comments, but apparently not. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this line of stitching. finally got into the rhythm of figuring out how to do this, and it's almost time for me to get dressed for the evening. My condottiero will be using hair taping to do my hair in a fetching modern updo.
Are we going to video that?
We actually maybe we should, but maybe we should do
stuff together.
Yeah, get the stuff together. He will be doing a fetching updo using 15th century hair taping techniques. So, you know, hair taping for the win. Okay, so something I'm doing on this. So I've gone through in one direction, and I'm doing this kind of like they do with leather work. I'm now going back in the other direction so that there is thread on both sides. And that's just so that if one of the lengths of thread wears away, then there's the other one to hold it in place. And this could absolutely be engineering overkill on my part. I will admit that 100%. But even still, you know, better safe than sorry. Because if the threads come undone and the piece comes loose, then I have to undo the lining to access it. So better safe than sorry. Better a little over-engineered than under-engineered. Absolutely.
I'm going to take drugs for the first time today.
Well, that's not true. You took the Dayquil.
Oh, that's right. I did take Dayquil earlier today.
That's a lie.
That was before I napped. This is a new day.
This is a new day. Sure. Let's see if I have any tea left. Oh, I do. Yay.
Where's the Dayquil
at? It's in my red bag, I think. In the box. Manicher? I'm not certain how to pronounce that. Manixcare? Teach you what, my dear? There's so much I can teach. I need you to be a little more specific. For those just joining, I am making, or joining since I last explained this, anyway, first off, welcome to my medieval sewing party. I am making a 15th century headdress that some people mistakenly call a hennin, but it is not. It is not called that. And I guess I know for some of you, you've heard this before, but I'll say it again for those who haven't. We have new members of the community. The term hennin makes exactly one appearance in the entirety of history, as far as I can tell. And it's in the 14 teens, not the era during which this headdress actually existed at all. And it is a preacher in French, Enguerrand, I think is his name. And he is preaching against the excesses of men and women. And in the section of his sermon, which has been preserved, where he preaches against the women, he talks about, he encourages the boys of the town to chase after the vain women and to pluck their vainglorious headdresses from their brows and to shout after them, "O Anna, O Anna." So that's what they're calling at the women. That's not necessarily their headdresses, but that the more important point is that whether that's an insult cast at the women, whether that is cast at the headdress itself, it's not the name of the headdress, and it's certainly not the name of this headdress, because this headdress didn't exist at all yet. They were wearing a style of headdress called crap. The French word just completely flitted out of my head. No. It's another A word though. But basically, it's a combination of your hair done up in two kind of corn, like beehive-like shaped buns. And then over top of that comes a couple of different veils, and possibly maybe with a wire frame on which the veils could rest. But it's not something that can just be plucked off. It would be pinned to the hair and a rail probably in multiple places. So it's not. And it's not this at all. It's not a cone-like thing at all. At least not the later cone-like thing. And that expression never appears anywhere in the historical record again that I've been able to find. It was Victorians who read that particular sermon and decided that a sermon from the 1410s must perforce apply to a headdress that doesn't really appear until the 1440s, but they're wrong. But we do know what they're called based on the documentary evidence from the era in which these headdresses actually exist. And in French, they are referred to as grande couronne, big horns, basically, or haut à tour, or in English, they seem to be called mitres, or sometimes horns, or sometimes more often turrets. And that's both in 15th century English and 15th century Scots, because we have the 15th century Scottish expense accounts from the Royal Scottish family, and for Queen Margaret of Denmark specifically from the 1470s. And there's a lot of entries for turratus, turrets, in Scots, 15th century Scots. So.
Sorry, we haven't seen them in a while, have we?
Well, Manishir, I have on my channel so for those who don't know, you're watching a live stream right now, but on my YouTube channel, I have a whole catalog under the videos part, not the live streams. There's a lot of live streams also that I've done with lots of good information and hands-on demonstrations. But I also have under the videos a massive catalog of finely polished, finely edited, carefully researched videos on a wide array of topics, including project blogs on how to sew, how to make dresses, how to make headdresses, how to make various components, how to do lace making, finger loop braiding. Finger loop braids are, for instance, this. Right, so on my YouTube channel under videos, you can find a whole catalog, massive catalog of finely finished tutorials and project blogs that will certainly provide a lot of really good information. And then, of course, I have my catalog of live stream recordings, which get deleted off of YouTube if you're watching from YouTube, but are preserved on the YouTube channel. So you can watch my back catalog of previous live streams if you are so interested. They just automatically delete after a month.
Where?
YouTube or Facebook. Sorry, not YouTube, Facebook. Facebook. Those watching from Facebook. You go to my YouTube channel, you can see the back catalog of recorded live streams, which are preserved permanently, more or less, whereas on Facebook, they get deleted after a month. Yes, indeed. And for those of you who are waiting for the live stream tour of my cabin here on the ship, which we'll do, that's going to probably be delayed to 6 o'clock based on the current time it is. Yeah. Congratulations, Merrick. Congratulations on finishing your first buttonhole. Yeah, it gets faster, I promise. With time, it becomes less arduous. But yeah, buttonholes are... I actually enjoy buttonholes a lot. Buttonholes are honestly a form of embroidery, really, if you think about it. Doing a proper medieval buttonhole is definitely a kind of embroidery. Okay. I am on a ship. We are actually, yes, we are on a ship. We are on a cruise. We are on Cunard's Queen Victoria, and we are currently sailing from Palma de Majorca to Cartagena, and we are somewhere right now in the middle of the Balearic Sea, slowly going because there's no rush. And tomorrow we will arrive in Cartagena, and if you're interested in our travel adventures, then you should check out Travels with the Creative Contessa. That is, I have a YouTube channel, and also on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So if you're specifically interested in the travel side of things, that's where we keep our travel content, because I used to try to do travel content on this channel too, and YouTube punishes you badly if you do multiple kinds of content. So no matter how much of a sort of jack of all trades I am, it doesn't matter. You have to narrow down your channel presence. Yep. No diversity. Stick to the topic and only the topic. Yeah. And we will be at 6 o'clock, I guess, at this point, after I'm all dressed up in my gala finery with my gala hair. We will do a live stream tour of our deluxe inside cabin on board Queen Victoria. And if we can manage it, we'll try to get out into the ship and maybe show you a little bit more. But later on this evening, we will be live streaming what's called the Red and Gold Gala from the Queen's Room, a beautiful ballroom at sea, where there will be dancing with a live dance orchestra, and you will get to see us hopefully strutting our stuff in the finest vintage fashion. Okay, so I have now finished the first row of stitches affixing the reinforcing band, and I will tell you, it doesn't look like much, but it doesn't need to look like much. Here is the one side. Right? This is all going to be covered. This will actually be what's visible on the outside, and this will be what's visible on the inside, and all of this will be completely enclosed within this cover. So it doesn't really matter how this looks. What matters is that it's functional, and it is, and that's definitely what we've got going on here. So I can already tell, I can already feel just by adding that extra layer, you can really feel how that's adding a nice stiffness and a nice resilience to this edge. So if you decide to sometimes if you ever decide to, you know, make your own out of vellum, I really recommend reinforcing the edge with another strip of vellum. Yeah, I mean, Manix Care, it is what it is. I do have a patron. I do have a Patreon, a patronage. I have a Patreon. You can become a patron on Patreon if you're interested in supporting my channel more directly. You can leave a super chat. You can become a channel member. I offer lots of perks to my patrons and channel members, including a private Discord where I post lots of extra resources and we have chats and whatnot.
Access to our library.
Access to our library catalog, and also we do a monthly Zoom session together where we actually see each other in person and talk, and I can actually give feedback on projects and whatnot. So yeah, and of course there's a whole catalog of extra film footage, video content that's accessible only to channel members and patrons on Patreon. Okay, everyone. Well, with that, it is time for me to get dressed in my not medieval finery, in my 21st century finery, and do my hair and whatnot. So I would like to thank my channel members and my patrons for supporting my work. No, I need to get dressed first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'd like to thank my channel members and my patrons for supporting my work. I'd like to thank those of you who leave super chats. Clownmate with that charmingly salacious name, thank you so much. I would like to thank all of you who just have joined the community as subscribers, as followers, who participate in the chat, who leave comments, who hit the thumbs up, and who are just generally part of this growing community of learning and creativity. I feel like we're building something beautiful, and I really appreciate you all being willing to come along for the ride of my journey of historical discovery. So until next time, everyone. And oh, Ben, yeah, Ben, you caught us just at the very end. We are working on the Nada Hennen, but you'll have to go back and watch the recording because we're about to end, so I can get dressed for the Red and Gold Gala this evening, which you can watch. Remember, Red and Gold Gala from aboard Queen Victoria, you can watch live streamed on my Travels with the Contessa, the Creative Contessa channel. Okay, everyone, until tomorrow, hopefully, may your adventures be creative and unplanned as mine always are. Bye, everyone.